All right. Thank you so much for joining me today for another inspiring episode of In the Name of Service. I'm your host, Dr. Barb Thompson. As a United States Army veteran and operational psychologist, I've spent my career working with military and law enforcement units, conducting in-depth interviews with hundreds of individuals who are hoping to earn their place on high-risk, high-performing teams. In most cases, they've already put in years of grueling physical and mental work just to get a chance to serve and sacrifice more. And that type of selflessness is special, and I feel worthy of recognition. While each person's story is unique and every path to service different, their goals are similar: to do something more, to be a part of something bigger, to make a difference. And these difference makers were the catalysts behind this podcast, and it's my privilege to share their stories with you. Today, I get to introduce a mentor, really, former colleague, probably like 10 years ago, Bobby Sidell. So he's a psychologist, operational psychologist in the Army as well. And he may not know this, but in 2008, I went to the APA convention, for psychologists. That was in Chicago that year. And I was already thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. I'm getting a doctorate in psychology. Like, what population do I want to serve? And I thought about the military a little bit. And I went to see you. You were there and talking about what it's like to be a military psychologist. And you sealed the deal for me. I was like, here's a person that is the most genuine and passionate about the mission that they're on, and I want to be a part of that. So you basically helped change the whole trajectory of my life. So I have you to thank for that. But in any case, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, first of all, thanks you for having me. And Barb, I think I remember that because I think when we were done talking to the audience, we talked afterwards in the hallway,
Yes, I
and
can't
you
believe you
introduced
remember that.
yourself to me, and we ended up.
Mm-hmm.
I do, and we ended up talking. So yeah, it's yeah. Anyway, yes, I do remember. So yes, Bobby Sidell, operations psychologist, been in for gosh, 23 years now, and I'll be retiring next year at 24. And spent the first 10 years on the conventional side, and then the last 13, 14 in special operations. And it's just been rewarding, fulfilling, and honestly a blessing to be able to work with the men and women in special operations.
We're going to take it way back for just a second. And I want you to, for me, because I haven't
Okay.
heard this part of your story,
Yeah.
describe for us your upbringing and some of those experiences that you feel shaped you into the man that you've become.
Born and raised in central Illinois, a couple hours from Chicago, by my mom and dad. Have a brother and sister, the oldest, so I was the big brother. Um, was truly blessed to be raised by wonderful parents and in a home where I was encouraged, provided security, allowed to fail, but had them along the way to teach me and model things for me. Just instilled in me things, the importance of my faith in God, uh, being there for your siblings and your family, a strong work ethic, um, having empathy for other people who are less fortunate than you, and being willing to offer a
Hmm.
helping hand. My parents really exhibited that and modeled grit, particularly during some lean times for us. So I was very blessed to have them as a role model. My dad, who passed away in 2011, he's the man I tried to emulate. And if I could be half the man he was, as a husband, as a father, as a son and friend, as an employee, I know that I've done all right. So yeah, just really instilled in me that putting a relationship with Jesus, being there for your family, giving your best effort, and again, taking care of people. Both him and my mom did that. When I was 15, hockey was a big part of our life. I played hockey, and at the time I was trying to see how far I could go. And so at 15, my sophomore year, I left home and tried out for some junior teams in Canada, up in Ontario, and was able to make the team. And so for my sophomore junior year, I lived away from my family,
Oh,
and that
wow.
really played a huge role in learning how to be independent, how to be resilient, because I didn't have my family there to help me when I was going through maybe a tough time. And being in the school, it was bilingual, French and English, learning the culture. Um, and then just, temptations, whether it was alcohol or just partying and realizing, I got to be able to stand on my own 2 feet and navigate that. And those 2 years really shaped me as well, in learning how to become more independent and autonomous, but still make wise decisions based on what my family had raised me to adhere to.
I had no idea. Wow. Okay, cool. What
Yeah,
led you to
yeah,
be a psychologist? It may be a long path, even since I guess
yeah,
that was, your Canada years, but
yeah, yeah. So was still pursuing hockey. Graduated high school. Got offered a scholarship to Princeton to play hockey, but ACTs or SATs, whatever they were, weren't high enough. So I was like, well, that's okay. So I was going to play one more year junior, and then hopefully get an opportunity to play Division 1 hockey. And over that summer, was at a youth retreat and had some serious prayer time, and I felt the Lord calling me to quit pursuing hockey and to pursue education, specifically psychology. And so
wow.
that was a turning point in my life, because I had invested 14 years and sacrificed so much to play, and but I did. I was obedient. Struggled with it, but I enrolled in college, and probably that first year struggled with my identity. I was a hockey player for all those years, and all of a sudden I wasn't, which I think helps me understand some of our operators when they're getting ready to
Mhm.
retire after a 20-year career. Um, but I was going to go to med school and be a psychiatrist, and being exposed to calculus and things of that nature, realized
Yeah.
horsepower probably wasn't there, and uh, and then I
It was
started learning
organic
the difference
chemistry for me,
between
so
psychiatry and medicine.
right.
Man, I was just like, ooh, I don't know about this. And so I
Mhm.
learned more about psychiatry versus psychology, and then that's why I was just like, well, that's more what I want to do. And so went to Olivet Nazarene University and got my bachelor's, and then was fortunate enough to get into Wheaton College, which was just an hour up the road, and go for my doctorate degree. And so in my it was interesting how during they have club hockey, so I got to play a few years of club hockey while I was there, which was a nice stress relief from all the
Yeah.
classes. But like um, you get to a point where you have to start applying for internships, right? And my advisor, who was kind of my mentor at the time, said, "Hey, do you know the military offers i- internships?" And I was just like, "I had no idea." So he encouraged me to research them. And my father was a Vietnam veteran. Was drafted and served. Both my grandfathers served in World War II, and at least one great grandfather served in World War I. And so, no career military guys, but I always had an appreciation for it, simply based on my family history. And the more I researched them, the more I really wanted to come into the military. And I looked at the Navy, and I'm like, I don't want to be on a boat out in the middle of the ocean, because I'm a Midwestern boy and the fear of sharks and all that stuff. And so it came down to the Air Force and Army. And because my paternal grandfather and my father were both Army, that's the one I really wanted. So I threw my hat in the ring, uh, got accepted into the internship at Fort Gordon, and then, took it from
The
there.
rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, and here we are. Yeah, it's crazy.
How would you describe your experience if you had to? Kind of in a nutshell, the experience you've had as a military psychologist.
Fulfilling, rewarding, uh, filled with purpose, humbling to be able to play a role in supporting men and women, particularly our war fighters who go into harm's way on our behalf. Um, that's been extremely rewarding, and, whether it was on the conventional side or the soft side. and play hopefully at least a small role in helping them and their families at different points of their lives, whether it's been in a deployed setting or back home when they're dealing with stuff,
Mhm.
marriage issues, or maybe they're injured and dealing with limitations, grief. A lot of our guys they're really good at compartmentalization to be able to focus on their job, and sometimes they compartmentalize a little bit too long, and some of that stuff creeps out. So just being able to be their consultant, their colleague, their trusted agent, to maybe help them and their families with some healing and have a better quality of life is it's rewarding. It really has been.
Yeah. What do you think has been, or I mean, I say has been, but it could be now even, your greatest challenge during your time of service?
What's been my greatest challenge?
Mhm.
There was probably two. One was relationship wise. A few years ago, there was an officer behind my back was making a lot of disparaging remarks about my reputation, and I caught wind of it later, and it it hurt because I know it probably damaged my reputation at least for a little while within the soft community, and struggled with that, um, and would stress about it, would wonder why that would occur, and I can remember probably a couple years later, I felt more isolated. Probably just all
Yeah.
internalized, but I felt more isolated. And I can remember just sitting in my living room one night. My wife Lee had gone to bed, and I was just sitting there and was just praying. And I realized I've got to let this go. I got to make sure that
Mhm.
bitterness or anger or lack of forgiveness doesn't set in, because that doesn't impact me. And this individual has no control over my life. And so I just decided right there to forgive, let go, move forth, and it was liberating. And I knew over time, uh, by what I say and what I do, my reputation would be fine, and it was.
Absolutely.
But I
Right.
learned a lot from that moment, um, both in how I need to respond with forgiveness and letting go, moving forward, and maybe even praying for that person. But how I need to treat other people, my own character and integrity. And I'd say the other big stressor, Barb, was probably OIF-1, the first year in Iraq, the ground war and all that. I mean, I'd only been in the Army for 3 years, and 1 year of that
Wow.
was my internship, and another few months was basic training. And here I was in charge of 4 or 5 people as a young
Yeah.
captain. And
Yeah.
probably just those first 6 months, the stress of not only trying to make mission, but take care of my people and make sure
Mhm.
that they were okay, and when they were going through stuff because they're missing their families or whatnot, making sure I took care of my people, and the importance of, if you're in a leadership position, um, taking care of your people is paramount.
Yeah.
So
That was so, I mean, everything was so new. Who or what did you
yeah,
turn to know what to do in order to either meet mission or take care of your people when
yeah,
you were in a new experience yourself?
yeah, yeah. Well, fortunately, I deployed for 6 months to Kuwait and Pakistan in 2002, so that at least helped me get a little more military bearing and professional
Yeah.
development. Um, And then, like, reading up on doctrine and studying as we ramped up to go, finding a really, I'm a young captain, finding a really good NCOIC who we had, and just trying to learn more about uh, the officer's role, leadership roles, being confident in making decisions, but learning how to take care of your people and their specific needs. And then when I got over there, Barb, I was just, I was like, well, how am I going to take care of myself? Because
Mhm.
if you don't take care of yourself and replenish yourself, you're eventually going to get depleted and not be able to take care of your people and take care of the mission. So I knew I had to take moments of that. And for me, it was faith. I decided up to that point in my life, I've never read the Bible the entire way through. And I'm like, what better opportunity? Because I'm going to have a lot of downtime. And decided to focus on my faith and pray and give things to God. I was mindful in how much I shared with my family because I didn't want to stress them out. But I could talk to
Mhm.
my dad a little bit more, having been a Vietnam veteran.
Right.
And so those were probably the two ways that I decompressed. And because I am more introverted, and there wasn't really any privacy out there. When I did get moments to be by myself, I took those moments because I knew that would truly recharge me so that I could take care of my people.
Yeah. Yeah. You've held a variety of roles, to support unique either missions or individuals or groups during honestly like a period in our nation's history that has been particularly challenging. You've been there the whole time. What keeps you going? And this might be kind of in the same vein that you're headed just now, but what keeps you going during those times and still available and willing to continue serving others?
I think one, it's I know this is where I'm supposed to be. Having that sense of purpose
Yeah.
that whether it was on the
Mhm.
conventional side or the soft side, this is where I'm supposed to be, and because it is rewarding and fulfilling, uh, it's easier to stay motivated. Um, and I tell my family, apart from missing my family, missing my wife, or some of the creature comforts of life, good food or a hot shower or watching Sports Center, the most rewarding times in my career have all been deployments. There is nothing better
Yeah.
than
Wow.
being forward with your men and women and taking care of them, whether it's combat stress, whether it's doing tailgate therapy, or it's doing some of the more soft specific things that we do. There is nothing more rewarding than being out there in the dirt with your people and hopefully providing them the support they need to make the mission. So that I think that just keeps you going, and then trying to model it for other soldiers, operators, the importance of self care and wellness. You have to invest in your marriage. You have to invest in your relationships. You have to take a knee and rest. If you're injured, um, I ignored some of my injuries for a while. Eventually, they caught up, and now I'm finally giving them addressed and to an operator and talk to them about why didn't you go get help and for various things and to a man, especially if it was getting hit by an IED and getting TBI or losing a teammate, um, getting slightly injured or banged up. When I do executive coaching, I ask them, why didn't you get stuff documented during that time frame? And to a man, and I'm paraphrasing, but to a man, it was I wasn't going to take a knee and not be there for my brothers. And went back out the door.
Right. Right.
Which how can you
Right.
not get that and understand that? And but fortunately, for those who are on the second half of their career, they take redirection and they know I need to go to get some stuff documented and maybe go to marriage counseling or see a therapist, and they do and see the benefits and not just of helping them perform as an operator, but just having better quality of life. So being hopefully that catalyst to help them with some of those things is really
Absolutely. You've brought it up, several times, just the I guess the unique nature of the people that you work with, and you've certainly had a behind the scenes view for some of the military's highest performing and uniquely trained individuals. What do you think, in your own words, are some of the core characteristics that these men and women have in common that you've been working with?
grit. They're very resilient people, and they have a high threshold for being able to endure challenges, stress, and things of that nature. They bounce back quickly when they do get knocked down or they have a failure. I don't think they get enough credit for their intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
They're very bright. Their critical thinking, some of the conversations I've had with these folks, I mean, just like, wow, how they make connections, very logical, rational, well thought out decision that can be very strategic in nature when they're in a very ambiguous environment with a very short suspense state with all these moving parts. It's dumbfounding. So I don't think they get enough credit for their critical thinking skills. and then interpersonally, just how they can fit into different environments and connect with different people from different cultures and different ways of life, but do so in a way where they can influence those folks to meet their mission requirements. And then I would just say character. I mean, none of us are perfect. Everyone's going to have their own issues, but just as a whole, I've always been amazed by the population, just their character. And they're thick skinned. They like direct feedback. There's been times where like, Doc, just shoot it to me straight. And I just give them some really critical feedback. And,
Right.
and,
Just
and they don't
say
get
it.
offended. Yes, they appreciate it, and then
Yeah.
they'll be like, yeah, you're absolutely right. I could be a jerk, and then they make those
Right.
adjustments. So, but that's why they're such a fun population to work with,
Yeah. Yeah. So easy, in my experience to work with, although, yeah, I know there are other opinions as well, but
Yeah.
on a similar note, but different, you've related to us all of these positive characteristics that, nature, nurture, a little bit of both, right? Have
Yeah.
created this individual has the ability to think under pressure and really adapt to any situation and still come out on top. On the down, there are some downsides. You wouldn't think so, after kind of listing all of those characteristics, but in your experience, just speaking to the, obviously the men and the women out there that might be in some of these positions, you've seen and spoken with so many. What advice or resources would you say, like, or recommend, for someone either in that population or that's interested in getting prepared to, maybe try out for that?
I think I could speak when most guys would tell you that they can be the worst patients in the world, right? And so being able to talk to them about how reframing it in a way where they see it can help them with performance, and that can be an easier way to get them to maybe get some help. So that's usually one way of doing it, but it's also just helping them see the big picture. It's just not performance in the short term, but it's helping them to see that quality of care, the wellness. Uh, they're owed that. Their families are owed that. And I tell them at some point their career is going to come to an end, and I want them to have a good quality of life as a human being, as a husband, as a father. I want them to have really good relationships with their children. I want them to have an intact, fulfilling marriage. I want them to find that next career that gives them that same sense of purpose and fulfillment. And so being able to walk through that with them. And then leaders. I just did a brief last week with some folks who are getting ready to take battalion and brigade level command. It's off and talking about the same things about self-care and wellness, taking a knee, whether it's sleep, nutrition, because it's not only going to help them lead, but it's also going to help them be able to take care of their people better.
Right.
So that's one of the things that I think they struggle with the most. But I think as we've kind of shifted down a little bit with the up tempo, they're having more time to reflect
Mm-hmm.
and maybe finally get some of that support. For those who are maybe looking to come into community, like a psychologist, you have to figure out what's important to you, what do you find fulfilling and rewarding. And, when I was a training director, I would have these young interns and residents who, they sound like a 4-year contract. And I would talk to them. This is right in the middle of, Afghanistan and Iraq. So the op tempo was
Mm-hmm.
high, and I would prepare them saying, hey, when you leave here, you're going somewhere. You're all going to
Right.
go at least once to Afghanistan and Iraq. So you need to get into that mindset. You need to prepare your family. And then I would just tell them, I go, hey, if you're going to serve 4 years or 20 years, just fulfill your contract honorably. So when you
Mm-hmm.
leave here during those 2 or 3 years, if you're asked to go with a good attitude, take care of your people, prepare your family, and go do your best to take care of folks. And then after 4 years, if you want to get out, no problem. I'll write you a letter of recommendation and all that, but just be honorable during your time of service. So for those who are coming in, it doesn't even have to be where you're like, well, I don't want to do 20 years, 25 years. It's like, well, just do 4 if you want to. I mean, the benefits alone, with the finances, the health care, and all that, Barb, you could speak to this as well. I would put Army internships and residencies against any civilian. The
Oh, yeah.
training alone is going to be
Right.
phenomenal.
Yeah, the
You're going to
diversity of
leave after a
training
few years in the Army.
is incredible.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're just going to be a competent autonomous psychologist when you leave. So that alone is worth it. But you'll have that time to think about, wow, this is a great population, or this is something that's rewarding. And if it's not, well, you did more than most in serving your country for a few years, and you walk out of there, a qualified psychologist. So I always encourage people. There's something meaningful and impactful about serving something greater than yourself.
Yeah.
And in our culture, that doesn't seem to be emphasized as much as it used to be. And
Mhm.
being able to go serve your country, I don't care if you're in the Navy, Air Force, whatever, um, getting to serve your country for a few years, it could be fulfilling to be able to get back
Yeah.
in that way. So that's probably how I would encourage folks. But I tell them, maybe even I told you that it's all about the right fit. Just because you don't want to come in, that's okay. But do your due diligence and see if it might be something that you're interested in, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot out there, impressions, and it's, I think, wiser just to reach out, to people however you can, even if they're strangers, right? Or after this, of course,
Hmm.
they might know how to
Absolutely.
reach out to you, but have real conversations about what life is really like in the military, rather than
Yeah.
thinking that it's all glory and no guts, or something else, some other perception that you
Yeah.
that you might have received
Yeah.
from. There's folks out there where it wasn't a right fit, and then they don't have a lot of great things to say about
Hmm.
it, and might misrepresent. And
Yeah.
and probably, there's people like us who
Yeah.
might misrepresent the positive sides of it. But I agree.
Yeah.
Do your research. Yeah, I wanted to hop back on the self-care train for just a little bit. It's
Yeah.
interesting because you think that's just the kind of the basics of life, and we do forget about it, and it's not something you hear all the time. But as psychologists, when people come in and
Yeah.
they're depressed or anxious or whatever the problem may be,
Hmm.
always going back to the basics can be so helpful. So, like, what are you putting in your
Yeah.
body? Like, what are you eating? What are you
Yeah.
drinking? How much are you sleeping?
Yeah.
Are you getting outside?
Yeah.
And are you investing in relationships where you feel connected? Like, that's
Yeah.
those basics.
Yeah.
Um, we're not great typically at them unless we've put some effort towards them, but they make such a big difference.
Yeah.
And even the folks who, let's say, they've worked and worked and been really successful in their operational career, or some
Yeah.
other career if they're not in the military, and they've let
Yeah.
those outside factors now kind of wear away at the basics that they used to be good at, right? So um
Hmm.
I used to tell our guys, like, yeah, it's, you think all those things are great until there's something, some kind of really important mission comes down, and what's the first thing to go? Probably sleep,
Yeah.
calls home,
Hmm.
and then, you start hitting
Yeah.
the drive-through just to make it happen, right? And then all of those
Yeah.
basics, and then you
Yeah.
wonder why you're not feeling well. So just wanted to highlight that, like, the guys that last the longest, it's really nothing magical. They are bright and the character is there, of course, but they also
Hmm.
just have that discipline to 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 take care of themselves in those very, very basic ways.
Hmm. Hmm. You make a and it's well, no, because you can be extremely successful in your professional career, but not be successful in your personal life, or all comes at a cost. It all comes at a cost, and we've seen guys who have lost marriages and relationships, and their health has been hurt, and sometimes by no fault of their own. Um, and the reality, Barb, is during especially the high up tempo days, talking to our guys and saying, "Hey, your family will be taking a backseat because you're going to be on this rotation of 6 months on, 6 months off, and while you're home, you're going to be training and resetting, and but finding those moments when you can reconnect with your family or prioritize your family or go see the physician to get some things documented before you go back out. It takes time and energy. and with the payoff, it'll help you on the long term because everybody's got a ceiling. You and I hit the ceiling much more quickly than a seasoned operator, but everybody's got one. And because I talk to guys, I've had senior guys in my office break down crying, and I encourage it. I'm like, brother, you got a safe place to talk and vent and cry and emote because you're a human being, and you know more than most, Barb. That's an honor to be in that position where you are trusted enough to be present with that and to grieve with them and to go through that with them and hopefully provide those opportunities to get resources for help because you got to care about your people, and if you care about them, you got to go the extra effort to set them up with resources. So there's my soapbox with you. Okay? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Hmm. Yeah, 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 yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. But you normalize it in the process. It's like, yeah, you came and talked to me. We normalize it. You got to express your emotions. You got to think of a game plan. And so you normalize the process on being able to deal with those things in a healthy way. So, yeah. 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 Mhm. Mhm. I would say two things. No matter what that calling might be or what they feel themselves being pulled to, do your research and talk to people. So we are blessed to have the internet. And you can just start typing in all kinds of stuff to learn more about things, right? And then through that, talk to people who are in that field. So let's just say the military, or the army specifically. When I talk to folks, whether it's someone sending me a young student who's in undergrad or grad school, but they have an interest in pursuing army psychology, they don't know what they don't know. And often I'll just spend an hour with them and walk them through. Here's some things you need to know so you can make an informed decision. But you got to be available. And I tell whether it's a young officer who's already in and they don't know if they want to stay in or they don't know their career options, or like I said, a young grad student, you have to be available to provide those people some good information so they can make those decisions, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Um, but that's probably the best way. I tell these young folks, you never bother me by cold calling me. You can send me an email, you can call me. You're never bothering me. If I don't get back to you in 24 hours, it just means I'm off doing something, but I will respond. Or if you leave me a voicemail, I'll call you back because um, they're showing enough desire to follow through to learn so they can figure out whether this is something they should pursue. And let's face it, Barb, we need really good people, young people, to assume that mantle. to take on those responsibilities for the future. And so we need to invest in them. And so being available as a mentor or an advisor, it's huge. So I encourage folks who are truly interested, do your research, find a few names. Don't be afraid to cold call and email them. Introduce yourself. Say, this is why I'm doing this. And is there time to talk? And most people are probably going to respond and give you that time. If they don't, that's okay. That's life. Find the next person to talk to. And if it's Army psychology, you're never bothering me. I don't care if somebody reaches out. That's what I'm here for. Yeah. Yeah. You need to pull that thread. There's been times in my life where I assessed for a couple of positions in the Army, and I knew the odds weren't in my favor, but I did it anyway because my whole thing was if it's God's will, it'll happen. But if not, I didn't want to live the rest of my life thinking, what if I tried? What if I tried? At least I had closure in saying that door was shut. That's not the path for me, and I will pursue these other paths. So you got nothing to lose by going for it. That's how you learn. And if you fail, you learn from it. You build on it and hopefully develop some relationships along the way. But don't be afraid to fail or go out and try for something that you're passionate about. That's what you should be doing. Well, yeah. And I'm immature, so that helps too. So that's probably one of the greatest attributes of our soft community. So yeah, you talked about most rewarding times in my career, but probably apart from deployment, the most rewarding time has always been seeing my soldiers and my officers succeed. So seeing somebody like you, who I got to work with at training group when you went off, was it down to Cuba, Barb? Is that where you're at? Yeah, and seeing you come back, yeah, seeing you come back all lit up with excitement and fulfillment of being able to go do something, not just practice, 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 but actually get to go do a mission. Anytime, yes, nothing fills my heart up full than seeing one of my young officers like you used to be, or a young NCO, be successful, be recognized, achieve a goal. Um, Without a doubt, the highlights of my career. And so for you to be doing this now at this point in your life, I'm just so proud of you. I just am. And to see you doing well, to see your family doing well, to have an opportunity to connect with you, it's just awesome. So thank you for this opportunity to talk to you and just reconnect and passion things out. Yeah.